Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking Miami with Cam Underwood from State of the U. I find it amusing, just of course, the banter in the live chat, which typically focuses on just very specific items, but also a historical perspective that certainly Cam and I love to talk about the history of Miami football and harken back to days gone by. But Clemson fans, we understand. We totally understand that you have bragging rights over everyone at this point, and specifically over Miami. There is no reason for me to ask Cam about games that have yet to be played that are just we know Cam's stance, and any logical person who follows football and knows the talent at Miami, but also knows what's been built at Clemson and where we stand in the ACC right now. For us to reiterate that umpteen times is just basically that Clemson is the best football program in the country right now. They certainly had the best team in 2018, arguably the best, right there at 1 or 1A, and certainly by far the best program right this second in the ACC. Can they be had? Can they be caught? Absolutely. There are two programs in the conference that have the resources, the tradition, the capability, and the recruiting footprint to do that. But they have quite a bit of work to do. It's not insurmountable. Things change in college football. Florida State won a national title in 2013. They were undefeated in 2014. They were going 5-7 4 years later, after winning an Orange Bowl 2 years prior. So things change, and especially when you have the recruiting footprint that those two schools do in particular. So there's no reason for us to debate where Clemson currently stands in college football. The record stands, and it is what it is, but we also know the capabilities and the resources at what I would consider to be the only two legitimate stops in the conference that can challenge Clemson.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that's just true just because of resources and everything. And I mean, Miami always, has good talent. And nobody's recruiting. I mean, Clemson could potentially put together the best class in the history of recruiting rankings this year. They've already turned down a 5-star defensive end who wanted to commit about a month ago. And they said that they're full for a 5-star already. That's the kind of, recruiting they're doing. The last two times that Miami and Clemson played, Clemson has beaten Miami by an aggregate of 93-3. I have nothing to say. They're on a class clearly above Miami. They're going to continue to be there until Miami or Florida State or anybody else makes strides. Blew out Alabama by 4 touchdowns in the national championship game. Y'all are the baddest dudes on the block, period, the end. Enjoy it. Hey, talk your stuff. Come on here and everything. You're the bullies. And I mean, everybody else is trying to beat up the bullies, but y'all are the bullies right now. So ride that.
And it's fun, and it's great to be in that position, and you've certainly experienced it. But it's great to be in that position and to be able to talk some smack. But I don't know, at some point it seems to, especially when we're 5 weeks or 5 months deep into the offseason, it gets to a point where I'm questioning whether people are actually gaining some of their own self-worth from their football team's accomplishments, and that's where it seems to be a bit petty.
I mean, look, I run a website and we're selling merch through Breaking Tea that has the slogan, "Let's be jerks" on it. I'm not going to be here to tell somebody not to be braggadocious about their team as they're good, because I will tell you, again, I was a freshman at Miami in 2000. We lost the second game my freshman year at Washington and didn't lose again until my senior year because that Fiesta Bowl was a travesty and Terry Porter went to Ohio State and he rigged it, and that was cheating and that was wrong. So like I said, we didn't lose until my 6th or 7th game my senior year after losing my second game my freshman year. If there was anybody who was talking stuff then, trust and believe it was me. If there's anybody who thought that was going to ride forever at that time, trust and believe it was me. All that glitters is not gold, and everything that's great comes to an end. So if you're riding this golden era of Clemson football where you won, your first national championship since 1980. Well, no, 1980.
81. Yep.
Exactly. Yo, enjoy that. I was born in 1981. So they had not won one since I was breathing, since that happened, I was, because that was the 81 season. But yeah, so when I was an infant was the last time that they won one at Clemson. And now they're, they've won 2 out of 3 and look like they could go on a run. Enjoy it. Because as quickly as it got here is as quickly as it can go away. And I know that I remember when Clemsoning was a thing. And don't think that that can't happen again, because it can. Because if you have a 5-star quarterback who doesn't pan out, like Kyle Wright replacing Ken Dorsey, and you think that everything's going to keep rolling, and then somebody gets injured, and then somebody leaves, and somebody decides to go to Florida State, or decides, in your case, to go to South Carolina or Alabama or whatever else, the margins are so thin. So while you're on top, enjoy the ride. And it is a wonderful, euphoric feeling. I've been there, luckily, in my lifetime. I've seen that. Every team that I support has won a championship in my lifetime, except for the Detroit Tigers, because they're never going to win one again. But, well, I mean, I was 3 in 1984 when they won one, but I don't even think that my family moved back from Los Angeles, where I was born at that time. So, I mean, yeah, I haven't seen one, but I've seen the Pistons, Red Wings, Tigers, the Detroit Lions, of course, because they're terrible, so they're never going to win one, and the Miami Hurricanes. But when you're on top, enjoy it at the top, because you won't be on top always. And I don't mean that you specifically, Clemson. I mean that you, plural, to anybody. You will not always be at the top, whoever you are. So while you are there, enjoy it.
Yeah, some folks would be surprised to know that Alabama had a football season in this century, which the century is only 19 years old. So this was, I don't remember the exact year. I think it was 03 would be my best guess, but it was within 2 or 3 years in which they won 3 games. That seems completely inconceivable that could happen. But Alabama went 3-8 one year just in the last 15 seasons. Let me ask you this, Cam, because this became a big discussion point in the live chat. It might have been right after you left last week, or maybe it was another live stream I was doing, and there was a debate over blue bloods. So I think this can be interpreted a number of ways, but some people were asking me whether this can change because we get stuck in these schools are blue bloods. Okay, what Clemson is currently doing, at what point? So can blue bloods change, or is that kind of a birthright that will never change? Or do the Miamis and the Florida States that come around in the 70s and 80s, and now Clemson, not that they haven't had a good football past, but nobody would argue that they've been an elite football program until now. If they continue this for 10 or 15 years, then they become a blue blood? What's your definition thereof?
Blue bloods is really looking historically. So I don't necessarily think that like you can become a blue blood. I think that you can kind of change the game so that in the current state of things, then you have added gravitas or importance. Like, again, when Miami was winning, I mean, Miami's always relevant. I don't care what anybody says, because people always talk about Miami even when we're winning or losing. But when Miami was winning in the late 90s into the 2000s, the beginning of the aughts and everything, like, you can't tell me that Miami wasn't up there. I mean, if you go back to the 80s and 90s, like, yeah, first championship was 1984. So you have a 35-year history now, of Miami as a championship caliber team. Not every single year, but it is more than just like a decade even, because in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, like, I mean, there was championships across 3 decades, and that put Miami into that elite level. So I maybe it's a semantic thing for me. Like, the blue bloods are always going to be Texas, USC, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Notre Dame, like those. That's what's going to be blue blood to me. And I'm weird. Like, sometimes I'm a traditionalist, and sometimes like I try to push the envelope. But like in this, I feel that term has that added association with it. These are teams that were good in championship caliber teams, the Oklahomas of the world, who won, in the 60s and 70s and things like that. But everybody, if you look back into back to the 1880s and on, like, I mean, Michigan and Notre Dame were winning all of these championships in the in the war era, the 1920s, 30s, 40s, things like that. That to me is what a blue blood is. But I think that you can separate the blue bloods and the elite history from 100, 150 years ago of college football to who is at the top of the sport now, who the power programs are now. And again, to me, it is a completely semantic thing. It's just really a wordplay kind of a thing, because it would be asinine for anybody to say that right now Clemson is not, whatever adjective you want to use for at the top, elite, power program, center college football, whatever you want to say, Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, who I hate, those teams, you're not going to say that it would take supreme haterade and a refusal to accept reality to call them anything but top tier elite, no matter what verbiage you're going to use. Would I necessarily call all those teams perpetually if I'm going back as a blue blood? No, but the power programs are always going to be the power programs, and that part is what can change to me. So the blue blood name, yeah, okay. So if I go back, because I was, Mark just asked me this, so I'm working it out on the fly. Sorry. But if I go back and I put, a fine point on it, a blue blood is a team that was historically successful back, I would say, before 1980, back, 100 years in front of that. Your power programs are the teams that are currently successful within a decade's time in the current formation of college football moving forward. That's my answer to the question.